The Muri arrived on Earth in the summer of 2089, their crystalline ship descending through wispy clouds to land on the specially constructed platform outside Seoul. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for months, ever since the first signals were detected and translated. The world held its breath as the first truly alien intelligence made contact with Earth. The landing platform buzzed with activity. Government officials stood stiffly in formal attire while scientists fidgeted with equipment, desperate to record every detail of this historic event. Among them was Dr. Kim Ji-woo, her pregnant belly visible beneath her lab coat as she stood at the front of the welcoming committee. "Remember, no sudden movements," she reminded her colleagues. "Their sensory systems are different from ours." The ship's surface rippled and a doorway appeared where solid crystal had been moments before. 3 figures emerged, catching the sunlight and fracturing it into thousands of rainbow patterns across the platform. The Muri stood roughly human height, but resembled walking geodes, their bodies composed of interconnected crystal structures that pulsed with inner light. "They're beautiful," whispered Lee Hyun-ki, Ji-woo's assistant, his voice filled with awe. The lead Muri stepped forward, facets realigning to form what humans would later learn was their formal greeting stance. "I am Lith, Commander of Scientific Exploration," came the translated voice through the specially designed speakers. "With me are Vex, biologist, and Priel, cultural specialist." Ji-woo bowed slightly, careful not to disturb her balance. "I am Dr. Kim Ji-woo of the Korean Xenobiology Research Center. On behalf of Earth, welcome to our world." The Muri's lights flickered rapidly, their version of conversation, before Lith spoke again. "Your developing offspring is visible. This is unexpected in a diplomatic representative." A ripple of nervous laughter went through the human delegation. Ji-woo smiled. "Yes, I am carrying a child. Among humans, life continues even during important events." The 3 Muri clustered together, briefly their crystals touching in what seemed like a huddle. When they separated, Vex moved forward. "Our records indicated human reproduction was biological rather than energetic, but seeing it is fascinating. How long until the new human emerges?" "About 2 months," Ji-woo replied, resting a hand on her stomach. "Would you like to feel the baby move?" The human officials looked alarmed at this breach of diplomatic protocol, but Ji-woo held her ground. This was exactly why she had been chosen. Her ability to create genuine connections. After a moment's hesitation, Vex extended a crystalline appendage. Ji-woo gently guided it to the spot where her baby was most active. Right on cue, there was a strong kick. Vex's entire form flashed bright blue, and what they would later learn was surprise. "There is an autonomous entity inside your body." "Yes," Ji-woo laughed. "That's generally how we humans begin." Over the next weeks, the Muri were given tours of human facilities while sharing information about their own civilization. They explained their reproduction process, a simple energy transfer between compatible crystal forms that created a perfect new crystal in moments. No pain, no fluids, no sound, just a brief flash of light and the emergence of a fully functional, juvenile Muri. Ji-woo found herself becoming the Muri's favorite human. They were endlessly fascinated by her pregnancy, asking questions that ranged from practical to deeply personal. How did the baby receive nutrients? Did it communicate from inside? Why would humans evolve such an inconvenient method of reproduction? One evening, as Ji-woo was showing the Muri visitors around the research center's garden, she noticed them watching her with particular intensity. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "We have been studying human biological texts," Priel admitted. "The process by which your offspring will exit your body seems improbable." Ji-woo couldn't help but laugh. "It's perfectly natural, though not exactly comfortable." The text described pain, bodily fluids, and physical changes that would shatter a Muri, Lith added, lights pulsing with what Ji-woo had come to recognize as concern. "It's true that childbirth is intense," Ji-woo acknowledged, sitting down on a bench as the baby shifted position uncomfortably. "But humans are built for it. We've been doing it for thousands of years." The 3 Muri huddled again, In their conversation formation, when they turned back, Vex spoke. We request permission to observe this birth process for scientific understanding between our species. Jiwoo blinked in surprise. This was unprecedented. No human birth had ever been witnessed by extraterrestrial beings. I would need to discuss it with my husband, Park Tae-ho, she said carefully. Birth is considered very private among humans. We understand privacy, Prill assured her. On our world, energy transfer is witnessed only by designated observers. Jiwoo thought about it. As a scientist, she appreciated the value of this exchange. As the human liaison to the Muri, she recognized the diplomatic opportunity. And personally, she saw a chance to deepen interspecies understanding. I'll talk to Tae-ho tonight, she promised. I think it could be important for both our peoples. Later that night, as she explained the unusual request to her husband, Tae-ho looked concerned. Are you sure about this? Having aliens watch you give birth? Jiwoo nodded slowly. I think it matters. They're so different from us. Maybe seeing how human life begins will help them understand us better. Tae-ho took her hand. If you believe it's important, then I support you. But I'll be right there too. I wouldn't have it any other way. Jiwoo smiled, feeling the baby kick as if in agreement. What neither Jiwoo nor the Muri could possibly know was how this simple scientific observation would forever change relations between their species and cement humanity's reputation among the stars. The research center's conference room had been transformed. What was once a sterile space for scientific discussions now featured comfortable seating, soft lighting, and various cultural items from both human and Muri traditions. Jiwoo had arranged this setting carefully for today's meeting, hoping the blend would put everyone at ease. Are you nervous? Asked Tae-ho, adjusting the small jade figurine his grandmother had given them when they announced the pregnancy. Jiwoo rubbed her lower back, trying to find a comfortable position. At 8 months pregnant, comfort was becoming an elusive concept. A little. It's not every day you invite aliens to watch you give birth. We can still change our minds, Tae-ho reminded her gently. Before she could respond, the door chimed. The Muri never simply entered a room, they announced themselves and waited, having quickly learned about human privacy concerns. Come in, called Jiwoo, straightening her posture as much as her pregnant body allowed. The 3 Muri entered, their crystalline forms catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. They had begun wearing specially designed light-diffusing coverings after several humans complained of headaches from their natural brilliance. Dr. Kim, Mr. Park, we appreciate this meeting, said Lith, the commander's crystals pulsing softly, with what the humans had come to recognize as formal politeness. Please sit down. Jiwoo gestured to the specially reinforced chairs they'd acquired for Muri visitors. As the aliens settled themselves, their crystals made gentle tinkling sounds, like wind chimes in a soft breeze. Vex, the biologist, seemed particularly animated today, inner lights shifting rapidly. We've been studying more about human reproduction, Vex began without preamble. Muri didn't believe in small talk. There are many details the texts don't adequately explain. Jiwoo nodded. That's true. Medical texts can describe the process, but they often miss the human experience of it. Precisely our concern, Priel added, the cultural specialist's form, glowing a thoughtful blue. We understand the mechanics, but not the meaning. Tae-ho leaned forward. Birth isn't just a biological process for us. It's deeply emotional, often spiritual. When our child arrives, it won't just be a physical event. It will transform who we are. The Muri were silent for a moment, their crystalline bodies reflecting this new information in patterns of light and shadow. This transformation interests us greatly, Lith finally said. Among our kind, new Muri emerge fully formed. The creators remain unchanged. Jiwoo smiled, resting a hand on her rounded belly. That sounds much more efficient. No morning sickness, no swollen ankles. But perhaps less connection? Ventured Priel, whose specialty was understanding cultural nuances. Maybe, acknowledged Jiwoo. The bond between parent and child begins long before birth for us. I've felt this baby hiccup kick respond to voices and music. We already know each other in some ways. As if on cue, there was visible movement across her abdomen as the baby shifted position. The Muri all flashed bright yellow, their indication of surprise. The offspring moves independently inside you? Vex asked, leaning closer with scientific curiosity. All the time, especially when I'm trying to sleep. Jiwoo laughed. Would you like to feel it again? After a moment's hesitation, all three Muri extended their appendages. Jiwoo guided them to different spots on her belly. They waited in silence until the baby obliged with a series of strong kicks. The Muri, lights pulsed rapidly in their version of excited conversation. Even Taeho couldn't help but smile at their reaction. Amazing, whispered Vex. A separate consciousness, developing within another being. It's why I invited you to witness the birth, Jiwoo explained, once they had settled down. I believe seeing this process might help you understand humans better than any amount of reading or discussion. Lith's crystals shifted to a more formal arrangement. We are deeply honored by this invitation. Among our people, witnessing creation is reserved for those in highest standing. Among humans, it's usually just family and medical professionals, Taeho explained. We're making an exception because we believe in the importance of true understanding between our species. Jiwoo nodded in agreement. But there are some things you should know before accepting. She spent the next half hour explaining what they might witness, the length of labor, the sound she might make, the bodily fluids involved. She was direct but gentle, aware that Muri reproduction involved none of these elements. As she spoke, the alien's light patterns grew increasingly erratic. When she mentioned the possibility of complications requiring surgery, Prill actually dimmed several shades. And this is normal? Asked Lith, clearly struggling with the concept. Completely, assured Taeho. Humans have been born this way since we began. It's intense but natural. You should also know, Jiwoo added carefully, that I might not be at my diplomatic best during labor. I might scream, cry, or say things I don't mean. The Muri huddled, together, touching crystal points in their private communication method. After a few moments they separated and Lith spoke for the group. We accept your invitation with great solemnity. We will observe without interference and maintain appropriate scientific distance. Well, you'll need to be in the room, so physical distance might be limited. Jiwoo smiled, but I appreciate the sentiment. They spent another hour discussing practical details, when to call them, where they would stand, what recording devices would be permitted. The hospital had already been notified about these unusual birth observers and had reluctantly agreed after several governmental departments intervened. As the meeting concluded and the Muri prepared to leave, Vex turned back with a final question. Dr. Kim, given the difficulty of this process, why do humans continue to reproduce this way, when your technology could surely develop alternatives? Jiwoo exchanged a glance with Taeho before answering. Some things are worth the pain, worth the risk. Meeting our child face to face, helping them enter the world, there's meaning in that journey we're not willing to give up. After the Muri had departed, Taeho put his arm around Jiwoo's shoulders. Are you still sure about this? They seemed pretty shocked just hearing about birth. Jiwoo laughed. Wait until they actually see it. I have a feeling this is going to change everything about human-Muri relations. Neither of them could have guessed just how right she would prove to be. The traditional diplomatic dinner had been going so well. The Korean foreign minister had just finished her toast, raising a crystal glass that sparkled almost as brightly as the Muri visitors themselves. Jiwoo had been enjoying the evening despite her swollen ankles and the baby's persistent kicking. Then, mid-laugh at something Lith had said, she felt it, a tightening across her abdomen that was different from the Braxton Hicks contractions she'd been experiencing for weeks. Everything all right? Taeho asked, noticing her sudden silence. Jiwoo nodded, not wanting to cause alarm. But 20 minutes later, as she excused herself to the restroom, another contraction hit, stronger this time, making her grip the edge of the sink until it passed. By the time she returned to the table, she knew the baby was coming 3 weeks early. I think, she said quietly to Taeho. We should call Dr. Lee. What happened next was a blur of activity. The dinner abruptly ended. Official cars were summoned. Taeho made phone calls while Jiwoo breathed. Through increasingly intense contractions, the Mori noticed immediately. Their crystalline forms pulsed with rapid light patterns that Jiwoo had come to recognize as concern or excitement. Is the birthing process beginning? Vex asked, hovering near her as they waited for the transportation. Yes, Jiwoo confirmed, wincing as another contraction began. Sooner than expected. If you still want to observe, now's your chance. The three aliens huddled together, their crystals touching in that particular way that indicated private communication. When they separated, Leith spoke for the group. We will accompany you as agreed. Our recording devices are prepared. The drive to Seoul Medical Center was tense. Jiwoo's contractions were coming every 8 minutes now. Taeho held her hand while the Mori sat perfectly still, their usually fluid movements completely frozen as they observed her pain with what seemed like horrified fascination. Is this level of discomfort expected? Priel asked after Jiwoo groaned through a particularly strong contraction. Completely normal, Taeho assured them, though his voice betrayed his own anxiety. Human bodies are designed for this. The Mori's crystals flickered in patterns that suggested deep skepticism. At the hospital, they were met by Dr. Lee Sunmi, who had been briefed about the unusual observers. After a quick examination, she confirmed that Jiwoo was indeed in early labor, 4 centimeters dilated, she announced. We've got some time yet. How much time? Asked Vex, recording devices humming softly. Could be hours, Dr. Lee said matter-of-factly. First babies often take their time. The Mori exchanged light patterns that seemed distinctly alarmed. As labor progressed, Jiwoo tried to remain a good host despite the increasing pain. Between contractions, she explained what was happening, why certain monitors were attached to her belly, what the different sounds meant. The Mori absorbed everything with their characteristic scientific focus, though their crystal formations began to shift into what Jiwoo recognized as their stress posture. 6 hours in, things intensified dramatically. Jiwoo's water broke with a sudden gush that sent Lith backing away so quickly they nearly collided with a nurse. That's just amniotic fluid, Dr. Lee explained calmly, unfazed by alien observers after so many hours. It protects the baby inside the womb. The internal environment is leaking. Lith's voice translated with a distinct note of horror. It's supposed to, Jiwoo managed to say before another contraction gripped her. The next few hours became a universe of pain and effort. Jiwoo lost her ability to play ambassador and educator. The contractions came relentlessly now, and she found herself making primal sounds she didn't know she was capable of. Taeho remained steadfast beside her, whispering encouragement, wiping her brow with cool cloths. The medical team moved with practiced efficiency around them, and the Mori were having what could only be described as an existential crisis. Vex had retreated to a corner, crystal structure vibrating at a frequency that created a faint humming sound. Jiwoo heard them muttering something that sounded like a solemn vow to the cosmic energies never to divide their crystal structure. Priel had gone completely still, all internal lights dimmed to their lowest setting, their equivalent of shock étoile. Lith maintained some scientific composure, though their usually smooth movements had become jerky and uncoordinated. The human body can withstand this level of distress? They asked Dr. Lee during a brief moment between contractions. Women have been doing this since the beginning of our species, the doctor replied with professional calm. Jiwoo is doing beautifully. Jiwoo, who didn't feel like she was doing anything beautifully, managed a weak smile before another wave of pain crashed over her. Time to push, Dr. Lee announced after checking her cervix. You're fully dilated. What followed was the most physically demanding experience of Jiwoo's life. Each push required every ounce of her strength and determination. Sweat poured from her body. The sounds she made were raw and animal. The Mori were utterly transfixed in horror when Jiwoo gave a particularly forceful push and the doctor announced that the baby's head was crowning. Vex's crystalline form actually emitted a high-pitched sound that everyone in the room could hear. "Is the human breaking apart?" Prill whispered to Taeho, who was too focused on supporting his wife to fully register the question. "Just one more big push," Dr. Lee encouraged. "We can see the head." With a final tremendous effort, Jiwoo pushed with everything she had. There was an intense, burning sensation, a feeling of immense pressure, and then release. A tiny, indignant cry filled the room. "It's a boy," Dr. Lee announced, lifting the squirming, wet infant for everyone to see. The Murray's reaction was immediate and dramatic. All three of them flashed brilliant white light, their expression of profound astonishment. Lith actually backed into a corner, crystals reconfiguring into what Jiwoo recognized as their defensive posture. As the medical team efficiently cleaned the baby, checked his vital signs, and placed him on Jiwoo's chest for skin-to-skin contact, the Mori remained frozen in place. "Hello, Minho," Jiwoo whispered, tears streaming down her face as she touched her son's tiny hand. Taeho leaned in, his own eyes wet with emotion as he gently stroked the baby's dark hair. The Mori watched this intimate scene with their equivalent of wide-eyed wonder. Slowly, hesitantly, Vex approached the bed. The offspring emerged. "From inside you," they stated, clearly struggling to process what they had witnessed. "Yes," Jiwoo smiled tiredly. "That's how humans are born." "And this is normal?" Priel asked, light still dimmed in shock. "Completely normal," Dr. Lee confirmed, working efficiently to deliver the placenta. "A textbook birth, actually. Mother and baby both doing excellently." The Mori huddled together again, crystal points touching in their private communication mode. When they separated, all three approached the bed where Jiwoo held her newborn. "Humans," Lith stated formally, "are the most physically resilient species we have ever encountered. This data will significantly alter interspecies protocols." Jiwoo laughed softly, too exhausted and happy to fully appreciate the diplomatic implications. "Would you like to come closer? Meet Minho properly?" The Mori hesitated, then slowly approached. Their crystals glowed with soft, curious light as they observed the tiny human who had caused such an extraordinary commotion. "He is surprisingly small," Vex observed, "after such an intensive emergence process." "But perfect," Taeho said proudly. As the dawn light began to filter through the hospital windows, Jiwoo looked around the unusual gathering in her room. Her husband, her newborn son, her medical team, and three utterly traumatized alien scientists. It wasn't the birth experience she had imagined, but it was certainly one for the history books. And somewhere on the other side of Seoul, in the Muri embassy, an urgent report was being composed for transmission to their homeworld. A report that would forever change how the crystalline species viewed their soft, loud, messy, and inexplicably tough human allies. The Muri embassy stood out among Seoul's modern skyline, a crystalline structure that seemed to grow from the ground rather than being built upon it. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The three scientists who had witnessed Jiwoo's delivery sat in their equivalent of a conference room, their forms still showing signs of distress nearly 24 hours after the birth. "I cannot process what we observed," Vex said, their usually smooth crystal surface showing jagged patterns of stress. "The human reproductive method defies logical evolution." Lith, who had maintained the most composure during the birth, projected holographic recordings onto the central table. The images showed key moments from Jiwoo's labor and delivery, carefully edited to focus on the scientific aspects rather than her personal suffering. "We must analyze this systematically," Lith insisted. "Our report to the collective must be precise." Prill, whose specialty was cultural understanding, had been unusually quiet since returning from the hospital. "I keep thinking about the sound she made," they finally said. "No Muri has ever experienced pain of that magnitude and survived intact." The three fell silent, remembering Jiwoo's primal cries during the final pushing stage. Their crystalline bodies shimmered with discomfort at the memory. And yet, Lith noted, she held her offspring afterward as if the trauma had never occurred. They call it forgetting the pain, Priel explained, having researched human birth psychology during the night. Their bodies release chemicals that help them remember the result more than the process. Vex's form flashed with bright indignation. That is an evolutionary trick. If they truly remembered, their species would have developed artificial reproduction centuries ago. Outside the embassy window, Seoul continued its normal rhythm. People walked to work, buses moved through traffic, shopkeepers opened their businesses, all of them born through the same process that had so horrified the Muri scientists. We must compose our official report, Lith reminded them, bringing the focus back to their duty. The collective will need comprehensive data. They worked through the day, compiling their observations and analyses. The result was the longest initial contact report in Muri diplomatic history. Its conclusion was unanimous. Humans possessed extraordinary physical resilience that defied Muri understanding of sentient biology. Meanwhile, in a peaceful hospital room across the city, Ji-woo was recovering with remarkable speed. The nurses had commented on how well she was doing for a first-time mother. "You're healing beautifully," the morning nurse told her while checking her vital signs. "And your little one has a strong appetite." Ji-woo smiled down at Minho, who was nursing contentedly. Tae-ho sat nearby, alternating between taking photos of his new family and answering congratulatory messages from relatives. "Have you heard anything from our special guests?" Ji-woo asked her husband. Tae-ho checked his phone. "Nothing since they left yesterday. I think they might still be in shock." Ji-woo laughed softly. "I didn't realize childbirth would cause an interspecies incident." "You should have seen Vex when your water broke," Tae-ho grinned. "I thought they might shatter into pieces." Their conversation was interrupted by Dr. Lee's arrival for the morning checkup. "How's our celebrity mother doing?" she asked cheerfully. "Celebrity?" Ji-woo questioned. Dr. Lee raised an eyebrow. "You haven't seen the news? The hospital's been fielding calls all morning. First human birth, witnessed by extraterrestrial scientists, is trending worldwide." Ji-woo groaned. "I was hoping for a little privacy." "Don't worry," Dr. Lee assured her. "We're not confirming any details. Patient confidentiality applies to interspecies observations too." Later that afternoon, as Ji-woo was packing to go home, her secure government communication device chimed. It was a message from the Korean Foreign Ministry. The Muri had filed an official report with the Global Diplomatic Council, and its contents were causing quite a stir. "What does it say?" Tae-ho asked, peering over her shoulder while cradling. Minho Ji-woo's eyes widened as she read. "They've officially classified humans as extraordinarily physically resilient and are recommending caution in any potential military engagement." She couldn't help but laugh. "Apparently, any species that reproduces the way we do must possess unfathomable pain tolerance and recovery capabilities." Tae-ho looked down at their sleeping son. "All this diplomatic commotion over something so natural." "There's more," Ji-woo continued reading. "They're requesting immediate trade negotiations for birth control technology." Her laughter grew until she had to set the device down. "They seem to think we might try to convince them to reproduce our way." "As if we would wish this on anyone," Tae-ho joked, remembering his own terror during the difficult hours of labor. At the Muri embassy, the situation had escalated. The initial report transmitted to their homeworld had been met with disbelief. High Commander Zier had personally responded, demanding verification that the observations were not exaggerated or misinterpreted. "They think we're malfunctioning," Lith told the others, crystal structure rippling with indignation. "They cannot believe any sentient species would evolve such a reproductive method." "We have the recordings," Vex pointed out. "The evidence is irrefutable." "Perhaps we should request a second observation," Priel suggested tentatively. The other two turned to them, their crystal formations shifting into patterns of absolute horror. "I was joking," Priel clarified quickly, a cultural attempt at humor. Back at the hospital, Ji-woo and Tae-ho were preparing to take Minho home. The nurse had just finished demonstrating how to properly secure him in the infant carrier when Ji-woo's device chimed again. "The Muri are requesting a follow-up meeting," she told Taeho after reading the message. Apparently their government doesn't believe their report. Taeho shook his head in amazement. Who would have thought that the most shocking thing about humans wouldn't be our technology or our history, but simply how we're born? As they drove home with their newborn, Jiwoo couldn't help but find humor in the situation. Throughout human history, childbirth had been viewed as simply the way life began. Painful, yes, but ordinary. Now, through alien eyes, she saw how extraordinary it truly was. Maybe we are tougher than we give ourselves credit for, she mused, watching Minho sleep peacefully in his carrier. The Muri certainly think so, Taeho agreed. I overheard Lith telling their government that any species capable of enduring childbirth should never be underestimated. Outside their window, Seoul sparkled in the evening light, a city full of people who had all entered the world through the very process that had so thoroughly shocked their interstellar visitors. Perhaps there was something remarkable about that after all. The morning light filtered through the blinds of Jiwoo and Taeho's apartment, casting gentle patterns across the living room floor. 1 month had passed since Minho's dramatic arrival into the world. Jiwoo sat in the rocking chair by the window, gently swaying back and forth as her son nursed. The peaceful moment was a stark contrast to the chaos of his birth. The doorbell's soft chime broke the silence. Taeho, who had been preparing tea in the kitchen, went to answer it. "They're here," he called softly to Jiwoo. She nodded, adjusting her clothing and shifting Minho to her shoulder to burp him. "Let them in." The three Muri entered with uncharacteristic hesitation. In the month since witnessing the birth, they had maintained polite diplomatic contact but had not requested any personal meetings until yesterday's unexpected call. "Dr. Kim," Lith greeted formally, their crystalline form glowing with subdued blue light, the Muri equivalent of respect. "We appreciate your willingness to receive us in your home." "Please call me Jiwoo," she reminded them with a smile. "After what we shared, formality seems unnecessary." The aliens moved carefully into the living room, their usual fluid grace, tempered by what appeared to be nervousness. Each carried a small crystalline object that caught the sunlight and scattered it in rainbow patterns across the walls. "We have brought traditional gifts," Priel explained, setting their crystal on the coffee table. "These are growth stones, usually presented to new Muri formations." Jiwoo watched as the three crystals began to resonate together, creating a gentle, humming tone and projecting soft, colored light that danced around the room. Minho, now resting against her shoulder, turned his head slightly toward the light display. "He appears responsive to the harmonic patterns," Vex observed, their scientific interest clearly piqued despite their lingering discomfort. "Babies are remarkably aware even when they're very young," Jiwoo explained. "Would you like to see him more closely? He's much cleaner than the last time you saw him." The Muri exchanged quick light patterns, their version of nervous glances, before Lith stepped forward. "We would be honored." Jiwoo gestured to the sofa. "Please sit down, it's easier if you're not towering over him." The three aliens carefully arranged themselves on the furniture, which had been reinforced after their first visit to accommodate their crystalline weight. Taeho returned from the kitchen with tea for himself and Jiwoo, then settled into the armchair opposite the visitors. Jiwoo gently transferred Minho to a more upright position so the Muri could see his face. His dark eyes were open, looking around with the unfocused curiosity of newborns. "He is considerably more formed than when he emerged," Vex noted, leaning slightly closer. "He's gained nearly a kilogram," Jiwoo said proudly. "He's very healthy." "You appear completely recovered," Priel observed, lights pulsing in what Jiwoo had come to recognize as their version of amazement. "There are no lingering effects from the birthing trauma?" Jiwoo smiled. "My body is designed to heal from childbirth. It's remarkable how quickly we bounce back." "That is precisely why we have come," Lith said, their tone becoming more formal. "We must inform you of certain diplomatic developments." Taeho set down his teacup. "Developments?" Lith's crystals shifted into their official communication arrangement. "The Muri Collective has reviewed our report and recordings of the birth process. After initial disbelief, they have authorized me to inform you that humans have been officially classified as the most physically resilient sentient species encountered in Mori exploration history. Jiwoo tried not to laugh. Because of childbirth? Primarily, yes, Vex confirmed. Our scientists cannot comprehend how your species evolved a reproductive method involving such extreme physical distress, and yet developed advanced technology and complex societies. The prevailing theory, Priel added, is that the reproductive process creates evolutionary pressure selecting for exceptional pain tolerance and psychological resilience. Taeho glanced at Jiwoo with amusement. So, my wife giving birth has changed your entire species' view of humanity? Fundamentally, Lith confirmed without a trace of irony. Military assessment protocols have been completely revised. Any species capable of enduring your reproductive process must possess unfathomable durability. Minho chose that moment to make a small gurgling sound, drawing everyone's attention. The Mori watched in fascination as Jiwoo wiped a bit of milk from his chin. May I observe more closely? Vex asked hesitantly. Jiwoo nodded, and the scientist moved closer, their recording devices humming softly. His physical structure is remarkably similar to yours, despite the extreme method of emergence, Vex noted, scanning the baby with evident fascination. That's how it works, Jiwoo explained. He's a perfect blend of Taeho and me. We have also come to discuss trade negotiations, Lith said, returning to official business. The collective has authorized me to offer advanced crystal technology in exchange for human contraceptive methods. This time, Jiwoo couldn't contain her laughter. You're worried we might suggest you adopt our reproductive methods? The three Muri's lights dimmed simultaneously, their equivalent of embarrassment. It is a primary concern among our population since the report was published, Priel admitted. Several scientists have taken personal vows never to reproduce rather than risk adopting human methods. Taeho chuckled. I assure you we have no interest in changing how your species reproduces, but we would be happy to share our contraceptive technology, Jiwoo added diplomatically. Cultural exchange goes both ways. Minho began to fuss slightly, and Jiwoo adjusted him to her other shoulder, patting his back soothingly. The Muri watched this interaction with intense interest. There is one aspect we still do not understand, Vex said after a moment of observation. Given the physical toll, why do humans continue to reproduce this way when your technology could surely develop alternatives? Jiwoo looked down at Minho, considering how to explain something so fundamental. There's a connection that forms, she said finally, beginning when you first feel them move inside you. Then during birth, no matter how difficult, you work together to bring them into the world. That shared experience creates a bond that's, she searched for the right word, irreplaceable. The Mori were silent, their lights pulsing slowly as they processed this. A bond formed through shared difficulty, Priel mused, the cultural specialist clearly intrigued. This explains much about human social structures. Would you like to hold him? Jiwoo offered suddenly, surprising even herself. The Mori's lights flashed in alarm. I assure you it's safe, she added with a smile. He's quite sturdy. After a brief huddle of private communication, Priel volunteered. Jiwoo carefully showed them how to support Minho's head and back, then gently transferred the baby into the alien's crystalline arms. The moment was extraordinary. The first time, in human history, that an extraterrestrial being had held a human infant. Minho looked tiny against Priel's shimmering form, but he seemed content, his eyes fixed on the gentle pulsing lights within the alien's structure. He is warm, Priel observed with wonder, and surprisingly heavy. Full of potential, Taeho said proudly. As they watched this unprecedented interaction, Lith announced one final diplomatic decision. The Muri Collective has established a permanent cultural exchange program with Earth, they said. However, our treaty includes one absolute condition. What's that? Jiwoo asked. All three Muri spoke in unison, their crystals pulsing with emphatic light. Under no circumstances will we adopt human reproductive methods. As laughter filled the sunlit apartment, Minho reached out a tiny hand toward Priel's glowing form. The alien's lights shifted to a soft, gentle pattern in response. Perhaps, Priel said quietly, there is wisdom in your difficult beginning. The bond it creates must indeed be powerful to make such pain worthwhile. Looking at her son in the arms of a being from another world, Jiwoo felt a surge of pride, not just in Minho, but in the strength of humanity itself. Through alien eyes, she had gained a new appreciation for the extraordinary journey that brought every human into existence. Sometimes, she realized, it takes someone completely different to help us see the wonder in what we've always taken for granted.